when you when you identify that you've lost that purpose, it's hard. When I remember taking that uniform off and walking, I was on a ship at the time, and walking away from the USS Nimitz, it was heartbreaking to me. I felt like I lost value. Then to
Mm.
go back and do the previous job that I was doing before, 35 cents more an hour, where's that value coming from? And then when I got involved in corrections, that value came back because the first thing they talked to you about is you're here to protect the community. Okay, you wanted to be a law enforcement officer. It hasn't worked out for you. Now you're sitting in my class and learning to be a corrections officer. But you're protecting the community because the people that the courts have ruled are not supposed to be a part of our society for a period of time are in there. And your job is to treat them humanely and make sure they stay there until the courts have decided they get to go out. And if you embrace that, it all just starts to fall into place. You get that feeling of purpose.
Welcome to the Vets to PM Military Transition Academy podcast, where we feature veterans and professionals who've built successful careers in business and corporate America to help you do the same. In this episode, Misty is joined by Pete Bludworth, a Marine Corps veteran and seasoned correctional facility leader who shares what successful veterans do differently in their post-service careers. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Military Transition Academy podcast by Vets to PM. And today I am here with Pete, and he is a Marine veteran. And wow, we have a topic for you today. We're going to talk about something that's super important for every service member and veteran, what really helps you succeed after the military. So Pete spent some time in the Marines, and then he went on to an awesome career in corrections. And so he's going to discuss with us those veterans that he sees be really successful outside of the military. What are those characteristics and traits, and what makes them stand out? Welcome, Pete, to the show. I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Oh, thank you, ma'am. And thank you for allowing me to come on and speak with you and speak to veterans. I started out, like you said, in the Marine Corps in 1983. I did 7 years with the Marine Corps. I decided to transition out of the Marines and go into the community. My dream was always to be a law enforcement officer. I always wanted to be a policeman. At the time that I got out, there was no testing going on in the state of Arizona. I could not find a law enforcement position. I actually went back to the same job that I had before I went in. And there was a certain point of that. I'm with the same people I worked with 7 years ago, making 35 cents more an hour than I was making back then. And I had that feeling of, but I want to get into law enforcement. I never even thought about there's three branches. There's the street law enforcement, there's the people who arrest them, there's the courts, and then you have the detention side, the prison and jail side. And one day the guy who ran the place came and said, "Hey, Pete," he says, you need to go on. You need to move on. You've done all these other things. You need to move on to something else." Called an old friend of mine who was a Marine, and he had gotten out a year before I did. And I said, "Hey, Rich, what are you doing? What's going on?" He said, "Hey, I got a job in a prison. You have one north of Phoenix. You should go there and start working." I'm like, "Prison? I don't want to go into prison. I want to be a street cop. I want to, all those things." And but like I said, they weren't testing, so I drove up the road. And a month later, I started in corrections, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to do this for about a year, because within a year, I'm sure they're going to need cops somewhere, and then I'll start testing again and see if I can't get picked up somewhere. 34 years later, you and I are sitting here talking, so it became a very, very fruitful career. That had I not had my military experience and the camaraderie that brings from the people around you when you find out there's other veterans, I would not have been as successful as fast, and I would not have been as well informed and capable of my jobs, of the positions that I held. Because as you move up, there's higher levels of responsibility, and the military absolutely prepares you for that.
Yeah, and the Marines set the stage for you. So you said you served 7 years, but then you went on and you did 25 years in corrections.
I did 25 with the federal system, and then I've done, I'm coming up on 12 years now with the private system. Yes,
Wow.
ma'am.
Yeah, so 7 years in the Marine Corps really shaped your personal and your professional life. So what were some of the traits that you learned in the Marines that helped shape your future in, corrections and the private sector?
I believe what really did it for me, and based upon my personality and how I was raised, the Marine Corps really focused on leadership traits and principles. JJ did tie buckle, and then you go down each one of them. And you focused on all of them. They all have their value, and they all together it creates the leader that you need to be. But also, and I don't want people to to take this as a word that's not strong, but you also would learn to become the servant, right? You have to
Yeah.
be able to take an order and fulfill the order. Sometimes you can take the time to ask questions about the order. Sometimes it's just get it done and we'll talk about it later. And so I believe that bringing all of those experiences I had in the Marine Corps and how I was able to adapt the leadership traits and principles, how I was able to mold myself to become the best Marine that I could be. I believe that sort of gave me the ability to then transition into a branch of law enforcement and be successful because many times in corrections, you can stop and ask the questions or you have time to do the preparation. There are times when you just have to react or you
Yeah.
just have to listen to what you're told and you need to get it done. And we'll tell you why we did it later. And so it was easy for me. It just, as I spent the time getting to know the job that I had as a correctional officer, it was just easy for me.
Yeah, and followership, is really the key to leadership because if you want to lead, you have to know how to follow. And I know in my 20-year career, it wasn't until the very end of it when I realized there are a lot of things that, I am sort of debating or arguing about or getting frustrated or overwhelmed over that are not illegal, they're not immoral, they're not unethical, but my preferences aren't being adhered to. And once I realized that, that's when I realized like you have to learn how to be a follower before you can expect others to lead you. And the military service does just that. It's never just about the belt buckle, right? I used to tell people all the time, they don't care like that we actually fold our t-shirts this way. Like they're not teaching us how to fold our t-shirts. It has absolutely nothing to do with folding our t-shirts. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely, and if you don't mind me transitioning it
Yeah.
to corrections, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
We'll bring in new officers. Because I promoted to the position of warden through that time frame, I had a chance to either help veterans come into the system and or help them adjust by working alongside of them. And it's not just standing in the hallway and watching them move; it's how they move, who's talking to who. Some facilities have lines that they walk in, lines that staff walk in. Well, the ones that want to hang on that line or step into our area, chances are they're the ones who are causing problems back in the cell house. Maybe we need to share and communicate that information. So there's so many little details about corrections that at start you don't really get it. You don't know why I'm doing this. It seems boring. It doesn't seem as though I'm really doing anything to enhance the better good, but you actually are. And we just got to take that time to teach you and you accept it. And then before you know it, it becomes checkers, or excuse me, it becomes chess, not
Yeah.
checkers.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed too from most veterans is our ability to see the big picture, but also
Mm.
our ability to connect the dots. Because from a very young age, and you served, and I know that your brother served as well, and your mother is on the sidelines watching her other son join. It's like, you know, you serve at a very young age, and you are, and especially nowadays, you're given more responsibility than honestly the world trusts you with, especially in America where you can't drink until 21 and whatever it may be. It's like, but we're giving weapons and we're giving full missions to these young ladies and gentlemen. They're taught at a very young age how to see the big picture. What I do is part of this process, and then also how to connect the dots. If I don't do this, then this is not going to occur. Or if I do this, this is what happens.
Yes, and it's very important because in the Marine Corps, in the military, you have to rely upon other units. You are a component that fits into a bigger system, and that system is then going to go and engage and do these types of things. It's the same thing when you join law enforcement and corrections, is because I am a correctional officer, but what I do supports the case manager, supports the teacher, supports the maintenance guy, supports the cook. It supports everybody else. And that's what military people bring.
Mhm.
When the veterans come and they join us, as the speed of the facility starts to slow down and they can begin to see how things operate, they start to identify, oh, I'm an important component to these people in this way. I'm an important component to these people in this way. But then again, they are important to me. If you don't mind me going, it's
Yeah.
one of the things that was most beneficial for new corrections people to identify was when they had a teacher come to the cell house and say, "Hey, I'm teaching Tommy math, but Tommy has a hard time coming back with his homework done. What is Tommy up to at night that
Mm.
we can address to help Tommy out?" And maybe Tommy's being bullied. Maybe Tommy just watches TV. Maybe he wants to be on a game system. Maybe Tommy's just not invested in his actual homework, and they can work together. So, like you said, it's all those components coming together, and veterans can see that. They can see that they're part of their piece of that puzzle is very important because the other pieces are going to be able to walk into it. And I've always enjoyed that when you bring veterans in because they will get there faster. They will understand that much quicker than some people that you hire who aren't used to seeing big picture.
Yeah, and one thing what I'm hearing you say, it's kind of all kind of dispersed amongst your tips and tools is purpose. And
Mhm.
when you join the military, they issue you a purpose. When you leave, they take it. And what I'm hearing is the corrections gave you another purpose. And so these veterans come in and now they're given this purpose because people usually join the military because they want something that is bigger than them, and when they leave they lose this identity. And so
Mhm.
do you find that to be true?
I do. The thing to go to that is when you identify that you've lost that purpose, it's hard. When I remember taking that uniform off and walking, I was on a ship at the time, and walking away from the USS Nimitz, it was heartbreaking to me. I felt like I lost value. Then to
Mm,
go back and do the previous job that I was doing before, and 35 cents more an hour, where's that value coming from? And then when I got involved in corrections, that value came back because the first thing they talked to you about is you're here to protect the community. Okay, you wanted to be a law enforcement officer and it hasn't worked out for you. Now you're sitting in my class and learn to be a corrections officer. But you're protecting the community because the people that the courts have ruled are not supposed to be a part of our society for a period of time are in there. And your job is to treat them humanely and make sure they stay there until the courts have decided they get to go out. And if you embrace that, it all just starts to fall into place. Get that feeling of purpose. A lot of the agencies now they put you in a uniform so you can start to get that feeling back again of that camaraderie, that belonging to someone. You put your uniform shirt on. Some places will wear a tie. They have the same pants and boots. They do uniform inspections prior to shift. They going on to their posts and things. Military people bring that razor sharpness. They're already going to put the crease in their pants. They're already going to make sure that their stuff was pressed when it came out of the dryer or brought in from a dry cleaners if that's what they decide to do. So you find that the esprit de corps, that feeling of sense of purpose begins to build back up again because you step back into a uniform. And then once you're there, you start meeting other people who
yeah.
have like stories to you, whether it's the same military time frame. Maybe you were same military, same bases, same assignment, but different parts of the different times, and you get a chance to do those types of things where you can catch up on what's it like now versus what it was like then. So you start getting that whole thing going before you know it. I want to go to work because if I go to work, I know Bob's going to have a better day. And Bob's my buddy, and Sally's my sister, and I'm going to go to work because we as veterans are going to work together today. And then that begins to build, that level of belonging and responsibility again.
Yeah, and the two things that really trip veterans up is losing purpose and losing camaraderie. So
Mhm.
what I'm hearing from you is that that was your purpose, and then you also had camaraderie. And I always tell people it's not that I want my workplace to feel like a family, but I don't know how to work if the people around me and I are not close and we're not working together. And and so I'm doing whatever it takes for my team, and I want that from them as well because that's what I got, in 20 years of service.
And have I've had several officers who came on board and they begin to do that networking with each other. Oh, he might have been in the Army and I might have been in the Air Force, but we get along because of whatever. And before you know it, they're looking out for each other.
Yeah.
And our kids these days, they've been through a lot in the last 25 years. They've been through a tremendous amount. And so they come to us and they maybe have some things they need to work on, or they have some issues that might be challenging for them. Who to go to better than someone who's been through it, maybe not with you, but been through it? Who can you lean on? And what I'm very proud to say is the law enforcement community, all three branches, including corrections, they are so tuned in to veterans and they're so tuned in on what veterans may need that they're going to provide as outside assistance support systems if necessary. But you also have that built in because as veterans, we get each other and we can help each other. There's times I could go back and now that we're talking, I'll remember friends of mine
Yeah.
that I would just swing by their cell house and see how they're doing and talk to them for a few minutes, or I'd show up and I'd say, hey, what's going on? Oh, I just need a break. I go take it, because they would do that for me,
Yeah.
So yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. So, in your time in corrections and in
Mhm.
the private sector, I'm sure that you've had to mentor and lead, and maybe even follow other veterans. So, what are you seeing as maybe the standout, traits and characteristics? Because as well as I do, we have veterans who leave the military and they do really well. And then we have, unfortunately, veterans who just don't know how to adapt, and they don't find this
Mhm.
purpose, and they don't find this camaraderie. So, the veterans that you feel are doing well, what are they doing?
I believe if bearing, I believe one of the things that is very important is that they know how to hold their emotions. They know how
Yeah.
to lock in and sort of evaluate and do their assessing of their situational awareness without letting it show too much. And corrections, that's to me, that's very important. So they come in already with an established level of being able to control themselves, bearing. Also integrity. They've
Mm,
learned through the process of being in the military, it's better to be truthful than not to be truthful. I would rather say I made a mistake than not say it and then something else take place. So they come in with high levels of integrity. And another area that veterans really bring to the table is work ethic.
mm.
It's not a being in the military is not an 8 to 5 job. It's a 24/7. It's 7 days a week. It is 365 days out of the year. And corrections is also, things could be going well today, but then tomorrow something happened. And next thing you know, you have to stay on shift. You have to come in early. You may have to do additional shifts. There's things that take place that might interrupt your time. Military veterans are used to that type of a lifestyle.
Mhm.
So they bring those things to the table. And what we have to do in corrections is we then have to capture that while they're giving us that, we then have to give to them what they need to be successful. And we're already making that transition into understanding our language, understanding our policies and rules, understanding why we have certain traditions that we do, certain aspects of corrections that we focus on. And we are humans who are managing humans, and there's a human element to it. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we are in control of ourselves, Barry. We are in control of ourselves. That we are, if we see something wrong, we're going to report it, integrity. And that if something's going on, that I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I will do whatever it takes in order to resolve this with the best possible outcome, work ethic.
Work
And
ethic.
that is where the value of a veteran is so important. And it's so important that we understand their value and we help them as they transition over into being a law enforcement person.
Yeah, and most veterans are thriving, but I'm sure that you've
Mhm.
seen some veterans not thrive. Any reason why?
Uh, it depends upon when you get them, I think.
Yeah.
I was up in Montana for 4 years, and a lot of people were trying to find themselves. And so they were, what are you doing up in Montana? I'm looking for the Montana dream. I watched Yellowstone, whatever the case may be. And and they hadn't resolved the things within themselves yet,
Mm,
and so maybe they were turning to alcohol, or maybe they were turning to other things that was impeding their ability to move forward into their transition. uh, I kind of call this where we will go back to what we knew so we don't have to face what we don't know, the unknowns. And a lot of the times when I saw the military veterans come in that didn't make it was because it was easier to run away from facing these new challenges, considering what they were going through at the time, than it was to push forward and move ahead. My job in my position at the time was to identify that and give them the resources, whether internally or externally, to help get them through that. And that's what I really love about your podcast. I've really been watching these, and you give such great opinions and advice and examples to veterans to say, if maybe where you're at's not giving you what you need, the information you need, but we're an avenue and we're an outlet. Or if not, reach out to us and we'll be able to go there. Employers, agencies, when I say agencies, I mean like Bureau of Prisons or State Department of Corrections, they have those avenues also. So I hope that as veterans are going through that very challenging time, and the easiest thing is to recoil back and go to what they
yeah.
knew versus going forward, they take advantage of those. They take advantage of them. If you don't mind, I have
Yeah.
one great example. It was within the last couple of years of me being a warden of a facility. A gentleman showed up, and all the indicators this isn't going to go well. Veteran,
Yeah.
been through, and he had been through a tremendous amount in his military experience, and it wasn't going very well. And so he and I had a talk. Well, I found out I wasn't the best person for him to communicate with because
Hmm.
he saw my position. He thought if I'm talking to him, I must be in trouble. Well, luckily, we have many veterans there. Luckily, another person reached out to him and said, "Hey, man, let's talk this out." And through him channeling his energies in a different direction, he became one of my most successful and one of my most dedicated officers in that facility.
Wow.
And we had a Veterans Day celebration, and we spotlighted him. He had his family there, his wife was there, his kids were there, and we spotlighted him. And he came up at the end. He said, "I am just so proud now that I was able to move forward and not run back. And now look at me, I'm successful. Hey, sir, is there a chance I can promote and go to another facility?" What a
Hmm.
success story that man's going to be.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's this myth where just because you have this uniform, you wear this uniform, whether or not it's in the military, a first responder, law enforcement, whatever it is, that you're a superhero and that you should be able to do it all. But that's actually far from the truth, And my brother was a Marine. He served in the first Gulf War. He got out due to medical. He floundered a little bit and then found himself, you know, um, camaraderie and purpose as a fireman. So he's
Oh,
been a
wow.
fireman for 20 plus years. And the other day, he called me, and of course, we have a stronger bond than most siblings because we both served in the military. And he called me the other day, and he said, I've never said this to anyone else, but I knew that you would understand. And he said, I'm starting to have those dreams of like, post-traumatic stress. I'm starting to see the kids that I've rescued or the people that I can't rescue. And he's like, and I know I can't do it on my own. So, because of your experience, what was the first step that you took? And I'm looking at my brother and I'm just thinking, of course, he's my brother, but I'm looking at him as a man and I'm like, bravo. Like, how self-aware are you and able to regulate that you identify that this is not normal and that I need
Mhm.
help. And I believe that that is the epidemic that we're facing in the world today, especially with men, because it's like they're not allowed to have these emotions and these feelings. And we have this toxic masculinity out there when we really just need men being human and men being allowed to feel and being
Mhm.
allowed to share. And you don't have to be a superhero and have it all together.
Absolutely, and that's what's important, especially with, like, for instance, the company that I work for right now is they create safe spaces for veterans. We have what's called a BRG, Business Resource Group, and you can join that so you can socialize with other veterans, maybe in a group, but then you can go and talk to somebody. There's a gentleman who's a recruiter, and he just happens to be one of those guys that when I'm having those days of it just isn't going well for me today, I know I can give Sean a call, and Sean and I can sit and we can talk things out because Sean sees things and I can share with him. It's a safe space for me. And that's what we really have to find. And we have to make those safe spaces accessible to where people know they can go to them, and they have to have the assurance that what they share there. A long time ago, I was watching some show, and a guy I think it was a firefighter, and he was sharing something, and he said that, he never took the time to cry from all the tragic things that he had seen during his
Yeah.
service as a firefighter. And so one day he broke down at home. And later on, his wife was talking to him. And she said, if you're going to break down, it should be here where you have your
Yeah.
children and you have me and you have a safe space for you to be in. And that really resonated with me. It really did resonate. And I believe that's why when I take a look at what's going on with the staff at the facility, and I'm listening to conversations, and maybe I'm getting it secondhand or third hand because people don't want to approach or they don't want to talk or put their feelings out there for others to judge, is identify where those safe spaces are. And if they don't feel that they're comfortable with people that they work with or the environment of their employer, where are the safe spaces outside of that they can go to? Who can they
Yeah.
speak to? And I it's so important that we do that for our veterans because you know much more than I how much our young people have been through. And I say, I'm talking about our 40s on down. They've been through 20 years of a lot, and we owe it to them. And especially us veterans. I was a non-wartime veteran, and so there's a lot of times when when I was at my last facility, and I'll get emotional talking about this too much, but there was a group of veterans from Vietnam that built a memorial.
Yeah.
I got to have lunch with these guys every 3 months. I was able to have lunch and just listen to them talk. They had become their own safe space. They all knew that they could call each other when those dreams came back or memories came back or conversations came up because they saw something on the news or a family member is experiencing something in the military. They became their own safe space. So it's really important that we find those safe spaces. It's very important that we encourage people to go to them. And we have to make sure that when we're doing that, it's with respect and dignity, that we're not, oh, you mean you're having a problem? Well, then do this. We have to make sure we're respectful about that because they're going through a tremendous amount and it's not easy.
No, and it's also important to recognize that everyone, like, this is not a competition with whose trauma is worst. This is not a competition with whose PTSD, you know what I mean, is
Yeah.
like mine's better than yours. Like, we're not in a competition. We need to be collaborating and communicating together. And when people ask me all the time, because I've worked in companies with, other veterans that do well and don't do well. And when people ask me, what is that standout trait? I always say it's the veterans that are willing to admit, like, these feelings, these emotions, they're probably not that normal. Like, let me go to counseling, let me get help, and then let me talk about it. The ones that are actively working to, like, in their own sort of healing, right? We talk a lot about trauma and healing. Are we ruminating on the trauma, on the PTSD, or are we taking actual steps to actually heal? And those veterans that are taking those actionable steps to heal are the ones that are really successful. And I was just flabbergasted that my brother reached out to me, because
Yeah.
that's not really the type of relationship that we have. But the fact that, Simon Sinek calls it the 8-minute friend. It's the person that you can call and talk to for 8 minutes about how you feel. So I'm that safe space for him. And my goal in life is to be that safe space for other veterans or other people, because life is lifing and it's hard. It's hard being a human being. And especially in the last 20 years, for those of us who have served, you have Iraq, you have Afghanistan, and the other conflicts out there, when sometimes you just look and you're like, was it all worth it? And it's important for us to understand, like, our service isn't for nothing. Our dedication isn't for nothing. The people that we've lost and all that should be our legacy. Those are the people that we go to work and, we have bearing, we have integrity, we have work ethic. And those are the people that we work hard for because they can't anymore.
So imagine this. Imagine let's just say, well, your brother's a firefighter, so he's amongst a group of people who are they look at a problem or they look at a danger and they go into it. That's not the norm.
Yeah.
And he may have just become by sharing a story of, I'm not going to get into specifics, but I'm gonna let you guys know. I called my sister yesterday. We had a great talk. She really helped me get through some things. He could now inspire somebody
Yeah.
who then says, maybe I should call so and so. Maybe I should call my sister. Maybe I should call my brother. Maybe I should call somebody and get the help that I need because they've been reluctant to do that. There's been many people that I've experienced in my career where when they come out of the military, it's a quick transition. They got out 2 months ago and here they are, and they haven't settled those things.
Hmm.
And then they go into this new career field that's somewhat mimics and does a lot of things that's similar to the military, and they're not ready for it yet. They're not ready for the uniform. They're not ready for the ranks to go on their lapel. They're
Yeah.
just not ready for that, and it just goes a different direction. So absolutely, I believe that because I know for a fact I had a friend, one of the toughest people. She's maybe 4'11", but she can go stand and go toe to toe with anybody as far as wit. She's just one of the strongest people I ever met. And she called me one day and she says, "Hey, Pete, I want to tell you something." She says, "I'm going to go to the employee assistance program. I got some issues I need to deal with." I'm
Wow.
like, "That's okay. I don't know why'd you feel you needed to call me?" She goes, "Well, because you've always told me how strong I am, and I don't want to diminish your image of me." And I'm like, Well, I say that, well, one, because you are. I said, but no, we all need help at some time. And it was such a wonderful thing because, she kept me staying in touch with me over a period of time. And she went and she met with some people that she felt was a safer space than the environments that she was around. And she called me up one time. She said, hey, you know what the whole problem was the whole time? I'm like, no. She said, I never let go of these certain things that happened to me these number of years ago. And now that I recognize it and I worked with people to get through it, she inspired me. She
Yeah.
inspired me. If that tough person right there can step forward and say, hey, I need a little bit of help right here, why can't I? And so I really commend your brother. I'm sure your brother's probably shared his experience in the phone call he had with you to an extent with the people who are around him. And that's going to be an inspiration to others. And we need that. We need people who are saying, I don't know if I should do that or not, to say, yeah, I'm gonna, and go to that safe space.
Yeah, and I encourage on this podcast, that's our vision. Doc Wright and Jeremy Burdick, when they created the podcast, it was really just to help veterans in all aspects. So whether it's business or maybe it's the logistics of the transition or the mental transformation. And so the goal of the podcast is just to encourage veterans to realize, like, you should try to achieve a meaningful and lucrative, whatever that definition is to you, post service career. Because if you live long enough, and most of us will, I will be in veteran status more than I was in the
Yeah.
service. You are, you're in veteran status longer than you served. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so we served and protected the freedoms and liberties of the United States and our partners and stuff, our allies, but that includes us as well.
Yeah.
And so we need to enjoy those freedoms and liberties that we served and protected as well. And we need to do that in our most sort of mentally healthy state. And when you recognize that, it's like I have an 18-year-old, and of course, like, emotion is the worst curse word ever in our household. And my husband, who, is 44 years old, and he's had such a, he was military as well. He retired the same day that I did,
Oh,
and
wow.
my husband is such a good example of, no, this is how I feel. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm mad, whatever, and I'm going to feel it. And so he is that example for my son. Now, of course, 18-year-olds are stubborn. So, but hopefully eventually he'll realize that, you know, I'm not a superhero because I play football or because I served in the military or whatever. Like, I have emotions, and let's tackle those emotions so we can go live, and achieve that meaningful and lucrative post-service career.
Yes, ma'am. And that's so important. And I think it's something that youth doesn't give is this we can see the future and we can see we've gone we're obviously not gone down the trails that others have gone down yet at this point in their lives. And that's such a great example because we do need that. I know I have two boys. My wife and I luckily have two wonderful boys, and they are in tune with their emotions. I'm surprised because coming up, I was just getting out of the Marine Corps,
Yeah.
and but they really have been able to focus on that with their mother. Their mother's my wife's very handicapped, and it happened over time. It wasn't overnight thing. It happened over time. So they've have a lot of compassion in their heart. They've
Mm,
learned that they need to talk and get things out. So there's a lot that our kids might not see today, but the examples that they're getting from your husband, from you, from others, will eventually play out, and they'll go, okay, maybe this is the time of my life where I should start doing the things from the example setters, from my mentors, because it looks like it's a good time, or I'm now able to accept that in my mind and move forward with it. I know for me, a lot of it came when my mother was close to her end of life, and we had some conversations where she shared with me the experiences that she had and why she was the way that she was, and how many years of her life she spent frustrated, how many
mm,
years of her life she kind of put it this way: I gave my life away to other things rather than focusing on the things that I have. I gave my life to my past, rather than letting it go. You got to figure out how to let that go. There's healthy ways to do that, and therefore I missed out on all of these years of this. It was pretty, at the time I heard it as words, but then as my kids were getting bigger and my life was moving on and my wife's handicap got worse, I started realizing, like, boy, there's times when people who speak to us are really speaking with knowledge, and maybe we should listen and start applying it. So Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been interesting, and I know in my career time, I've seen people who struggle with that also. And maybe at the time they don't get it, but later on they do.
Yeah, that gave me goosebumps because I think it's so true. And there's in the veteran community, there is an epidemic where we're just kind of ruminating on, our past career or the things that we've dealt with and not taking away anything that you've dealt with. However, we need to deal with it so we can move on. And moving on sounds like a really sort of insensitive thing to do. But I don't think that all the people that lost their lives fighting
Mhm.
for, our awesome American flag would want us living the way that most veterans live today, where we're giving, just like your mother, you're giving over your life to, these traumas and stuff when most of us have the physical and the mental capability to get better, and getting better is relative, right? But like my friend, she framed it the other day, and she's having a particularly tough time in her life, and she said the best thing is that my will to live is greater than my will to die. So every day I get up, when my will to live is greater than my will to die, then I'm in a good state. And she's like, so I just have to view it that way. And do I
Right.
want to live this way, or do I want to go ahead and experience some temporary pain by, going through the healing process? So then that way I can live the next 20 years, you know, ready to tackle life and not be a victim. Of course, there's several different incidents where people have the right to be upset, and I'm not trying to be insensitive, but we
Hmm.
also have, especially the veteran community, you can say what you want about VA, but we are, and I know that this is personal to you, but from the Vietnam era, I mean, we are so much better off than we've ever been when it comes to VA healthcare. And when it comes to assistance for veterans and programs and communities and full on budgets that are going to help fund the veteran community in getting better.
The mental health status of our great veterans is really so important, and that's why it's great to see what's moving forward with the VA. It's great to see that companies or agencies are now saying, you know what, we need to do our part also. And it's gonna because the challenging thing then is to get the veteran to do it, to get the veteran to
Yeah.
get involved. I've seen those, like as we talked about, who weren't able to get past that to become successful in a career in corrections. I've seen others who they grabbed that lightning, so to speak. They went to the safe space, they talked to the right people, and they were able to move on and initiate a career. And it is so important for our veterans, and it's so important as veterans that we identify that in our new veterans, the ones who are either retiring or coming out after a number of years. And we're there to let them know, hey, this is out there. Sometimes you got to be more careful how you push or how you prod. Sometimes you have to really push, but it's important that we do it. It's important that channels like yours, this great podcast you have, it's important that it's here
Yeah.
because you might grab people who weren't ready to go just yet. You might be able to provide some information that someone says, "All right, I've heard it for the 15th time. I guess I'm going to go." And that's why I really commend you for what you do and what your business is all about, because it's just wonderful for our veterans.
Well, thanks. That means a lot, and I'm a Vets to PM success story. So I'm so blessed that
Mhm.
I get to give back and work for the same people that encourage me to, you know, identify my transferable skill sets. Like I'll never forget, Kathy wrote my resume. She's our career services director, and I told her, I said, I'm just not sure I can be good at anything else than the military. And she's like, what? And she wrote my resume, and she told me, she made me kind of feel like I was a big deal. And it just really comes down to the fact that we all have these transferable skill sets that are not only super beneficial for the military, but can benefit any organization. The point is that a veteran has a unique value add because we do have that bearing, we have the integrity, and we have the work ethic that most organizations desire. So as we wrap up, I'd love for you to leave us with one thing that veterans, maybe can do, and then as far as when they transition, and then maybe one thing that us fellow veterans can do for others.
Well, if going from veterans to going into corrections, which has worked out for me and it's been wonderful
Yeah.
for me and for many, many other veterans that I've worked with, whether it's in
Yeah,
the
that's
private.
huge in South Carolina. Like there's lots, like it's like all vet, yeah. In the corrections facility, it's mostly veterans.
Oh, I have a son that lives in Spartanburg, South
Oh yeah,
Carolina.
yep. I'm about
Yeah.
2.5 hours.
Okay. It's just it's very important for them to understand, like you talked about the resume, how to transfer what you did into the private sector.
Yeah.
And you can use there's these things called Chat GPT or whatever.
Yeah.
There's these AI programs that they scare me. I don't the computer scares me. But they can they can find ways in which to translate the great experiences, the responsibility. That is something that when we interview a lot of veterans, they don't understand. You mentioned this earlier when we were talking. They have carried a lot of weight.
Yeah.
They were giving things that can cause harm or death to other people. They were taught tactics and things. They were taught a certain element of how to go to war. They were taught different things. They've carried a lot of weight. Most people haven't. And unfortunately, most of the time when you receive a newer veteran, they don't know how to transfer the responsibility they had into the words that will go into the job that they're
Yeah.
applying for, or how to articulate that. I've had people who've come through, whether they were NCOs or staff NCOs or officers, and they just don't know how to translate the level of responsibility they had. So that would be one key thing I would say to veterans is work on that. Work on being able to express into the private sector, the responsibility and the work and your experience that you've had. As far as going into, the new career fields and thing is understand there's going to be a time frame of adjustment.
Yeah.
When a lot of veterans would ask me, well, hey, how long did it take you to adjust to corrections? I tell them it was easily a year.
Yeah.
That first year was so fast, and I didn't understand, and things were going on, but eventually it will slow down, and you begin to understand the cycle of how the facility operates, why it operates the way that it does, and things become easier and better. And then you start absorbing the knowledge to switch it from checkers to chess. And so it's understanding that adjustment period, it has to take place. Give it a chance to take place. Many of the veterans that we started in corrections that decided to leave in 2, 3, or 4 months, they didn't have the patience to let it go and let it play out longer.
Yeah.
So please just understand, let it play out longer. And also is to use it as a reset button.
Yeah.
There's enough familiar things around you, uniforms, insignias, ceremonies, tour, just like we used to have to clean the barracks and do all those kinds of things because the general was coming. Well, when you got the governor coming,
Same thing.
you're going
Yeah.
to be cleaning.
Dog and pony show.
Right. So they're used to those types of things. So understand, there's enough familiarity with the corrections field to allow you to feel comfortable as you move forward, on with your career. I've been very, very blessed. I'm a high school graduate. I decided that after I got out of high school, I was going to go in the Marine Corps. Um, but corrections was something that I was able to excel and achieve great things in my opinion, great things. And I did that all because I had a great background
Hmm.
and the Marine Corps gave me that. The military gave me that. And I'm proud to be in corrections because as you can see behind me, I think it's blurred out. My son set up my screen for me. I have I have tons of challenge coins behind me and I have so much memorabilia from different, whether it's law enforcement or military, because I still feel as though I'm a part of that and they will get that from corrections if they give it a try. What I recommend they do is do some research, figure out what you want to do. Some people just want to stay in one place. There's no problem with that. If there's a corrections agency nearby or if there's a correctional facility nearby, give them a call and see what does it take to come on board with that. Uh, Also decide, well, if I want to move around, well, maybe you want to move around only in your state
Hmm.
agency. Maybe I'll move around the country. Then you got the federal system or you got the private systems. They're all over the place. And you can do like I did. You can just kind of like island hop everywhere you go. And I've lived in 11 states in 35
Wow.
years. And it's been pretty neat. So, do some research and figure out which way you want to go. And always know this, just because you decided to start one way doesn't mean you can't change later. I never wanted to leave Phoenix. I was home. I had a great house. Everything was clicking on all cylinders. And then that one conversation with a veteran leader who said, you need to go out of here and you need to try something else. There's another facility you can go to. Boom. Moved up through my ranks. I made it to warden. I was actually able to run a facility and be there to support veterans because those veterans were supporting me too. It's a
Yeah.
two-way street. It's not one way. Those veterans supported me too. I was able to do things and look at those faces and see what they were going through. And we had such camaraderie, regardless of what branch you were in. We had such camaraderie. And just know that it's a wide open field out there, and just go grasp it. Just go grasp it.
Well, thank you so much for, really just feeding into the veteran community. Is such a great conversation. And I think that a lot of veterans deal with loss of purpose and loss of camaraderie. And you've proven that if that is what you want, when you separate or retire from the military, you can find it. And we had another podcast guest said, whatever you put out into the universe is what the universe is going to give back to you. And so if you put out that I want a purpose and I want to help and I want camaraderie and I want to be a family, whatever that means to you in your workplace, then watch out, because you'll get it. And you might find it in the corrections, industry, or wherever you tend to wander. And so I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for reaching out and wanting to be a guest. And this just so happens to be like a really important episode to me, because I love seeing veterans thrive. Sure, talking about the stories where maybe they don't, those are important too, but it's important for us to highlight that there is such thing as a meaningful and lucrative, whatever the definition of lucrative is to you, post-service life. You just have to go and find it. And thank you so much, Pete, for helping others do the same.
Thank you for letting me talk to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us at the Military Transition Academy podcast. If we sparked your interest and you're ready to learn more, visit vets2pm.com. We'd love to help you prepare for a meaningful and lucrative post-service career.